So let's kind of shift back. I kind of want to go back to Nicole a little bit. And let's kind of discuss experiential learning. So let's dive more in depth with internships and co-ops. And I know you participated in internships during your time here at Point Park. So would you be able to tell us about those experiences and how they kind of prepared you for the career that you're currently in?
Yeah, my favorite internship was I was a reporter for the music section at Pittsburgh City Paper, which was it was just the coolest thing ever. I got to go see Third Eye Blind for free and then write about it. It was the best. I had a really great experience there. I did 3 different internships at the Toonseum, which was Pittsburgh's Museum for Cartoon Art. One was focused on social media, another one was event planning, and then another one was more like integrated marketing related, kind of doing a little bit of everything. And I also interned at Forever Broadcasting, the radio station cluster in my hometown of Johnstown. And each experience led to other experiences that would go on to further my career. So after I interned at City Paper, they let me freelance for them for the rest of my undergrad, which was awesome. More free concerts. At the Toonseum, I discovered my passion for nonprofits and met a lot of people that I ended up continuing to network with throughout my career, and even when I was working at the Science Center. My internship at Forever Broadcasting led to a part-time position as a weekend board operator for the local football games. So just building up more skills. And together, all of these experiences just helped me learn to write in different formats for different audiences, which is something that I have to do every day.
Love to hear that. Love that. So Kaitlyn, I understand we kind of mentioned this earlier. You recently graduated from Point Park last year. You kind of talked about that a little bit. And during your time here at Point Park, I know that you mentioned it earlier as well, you completed internships at the Carnegie Science Center and the Homeless Children's Education Fund. Could you go a little bit more in depth about that, about those experiences and what you learned from those?
Yeah, absolutely. They were both internships that pushed me completely out of my comfort zone. For one, I am not techie. I'm still not techie, which is terrible. All of our school curriculum is like online on Chromebooks, and students are always like, how do I fix this? And I'm like, I have no idea. Doing data analysis at Homeless Children's Education Fund was a lot of crunching numbers, a lot of looking at spreadsheets. And eventually I somewhat transitioned there into like a pseudo community outreach role, which honestly suited me better. But the beginning was hard, and it was great to be challenged. But even more so, the Carnegie Science Center, when I did STEM education, was terrifying. I don't even know. I regretted as soon as I applied. I was like, if they interview me, I have no idea how my skills are going to translate here, being what I study. And then the interview went great and they offered me the position and I took it. And it then it was happening during the pandemic. So it was online most of the time, although I was in person a bit. And so I think it prepared me for transitioning to the current path we're still on with kind of pandemic jobs, when our jobs are constantly telling us, back and forth online, especially in teaching. I've had to work from home. I've had to be quarantined working from home. And I've had to kind of be prepared for that. And, the Carnegie Science Center did that for me and helped me adjust even before I started my career path. But it also was just an awesome chance to expand my opportunities and also just my skill set. I was able to adapt to a lot of challenges. I had great bosses there, and that was really helpful. And just being asked to educate kids about STEM was not something I would ever thought I would have done. And now I help teach kids trig, which I also never thought I would do. So they all just kind of directly translate into being pushed out of your comfort zone, being willing to take a chance on yourself. Kind of like we talked about earlier during Jamie's presentation, apply to everything, even if you feel silly for doing it. because you never know who's going to be willing to take a chance on you. So
thank you for sharing that. I know taking a chance and stepping out of your comfort zone is very scary. So it's good to do that and just to see where opportunities line up for you. Now, Lauren, I know you're a current Point Park student, but I'd like to touch upon your experiential learning opportunities as well, since you've been here at Point Park. So could you talk to us about your experiences that you completed or you're about to complete, and how that has prepared you for life after graduation?
Yeah, absolutely. So last summer, I did my first internship. It was an editorial internship with a very small magazine based in Chicago called Picture This Post. It was just one that I had found one day browsing on LinkedIn. It's a nonprofit magazine, so everyone was volunteers. And they focus on writing very concise articles about arts in Chicago, and then they sort of branch out into other cities. And I was always interested in the arts, especially with my dance background. It was a good first internship, I think. It was unpaid because it was all volunteer based, and there was a very flexible schedule, so I could work as much as I wanted to, or if I was busy with school or anything. I was also bartending at the time. I could work as little as I wanted to as well. And one of the things that this first internship really taught me was how to be independent in my work. I feel like a lot of times in academia specifically, it's easy to feel you get a lot of direction from your professors, which is great. It's awesome. I'm so grateful for the direction from my professors. But in this internship, it wasn't very organized, and there wasn't a lot of direction that I was getting from my bosses. And initially, it was kind of frustrating because I was just starting out and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But it actually prepared me a lot for working independently and being able to create my own direction when it wasn't given to me. And so that internship lasted that summer. And then I didn't continue with them. It just wasn't a great fit for me personally. And then when I started my senior year, I was sort of freaking out a little bit. I was like, okay, I need more professional experiences for my resume. Like, I'm going to graduate. I have no clue what I want to do. And so I was on like LinkedIn and Handshake every day, like flagging anything that had writing or editing in it, no matter what it was. And I was just going through and applying to everything. And then once I got to the interview stage, if I got there, that's when I sort of figured out, okay, is this a good fit for me? Like, am I a good fit for them? And one of the companies that I applied to is called Proofpoint, and they're a cybersecurity company based here in Pittsburgh. Kind of like Kate, I think you were saying you applied to something and you were like, why did I ever apply to this? Like, that's how I felt. I was going into this interview and I was like, I know nothing about cybersecurity. I'm not super techie either. I can handle things, but I don't know how to spread awareness to other people about computers and technology. But I ended up interviewing, and I had 3 rounds of interviews and they all went great. And I think part of it was, like Jamie said, is I was very authentic about myself. And they did mention in the interview process, you don't have to know anything about cybersecurity, which definitely lifted a weight off of my chest. But just being my authentic self and stating how creative I am and what my hobbies are and how interested I am in the arts, I think is what really helped me stand out from the other applicants in this position. And so I ended up getting the job, and it's a paid internship. I work about 30 hours a week, so it is a lot. But it's been a really rewarding opportunity. I'm on a team of writers and designers, and they treat me like one of their own. They don't treat me like an internship, which has been great. And then one of the things that's really interesting about this internship specifically is a lot of the writers that I work with. There's an ex-sitcom writer, there's an ex-journalist, there's an ex-novelist. So people that have come from all different areas of writing and literature specifically, who are now transitioning into this other career, has been really interesting to see. And part of what my role is specifically is helping them come up with very creative storytelling ways to spread cybersecurity awareness. And part of my creative background has really helped me excel in this, because they'll come to me specifically and say, okay, you are currently a creative writing student. What do you think about this? Do you have any ideas? And a lot of the ideas that I present do get taken up and do get put into final stages of this, which is really cool to see as a 21-year-old who hasn't graduated college, who's doing cool things in this well-known company. And then I'm also, sorry, Kenny, I know this is longer than 3 minutes, but I'm almost done. So another internship that I have been applying to constantly, I think I've applied 4 or 5 times, was for Autumn House Publishing as an editorial intern. They're a local publishing house in Pittsburgh, focusing a lot on advocating and publishing voices that are oppressed a lot of the time, which I really loved and I wanted to be a part of. So I applied like 4 or 5 times. I got denied every single time. I didn't even get an interview the first couple of times. Second couple of times I made it through 1 round. I didn't keep going. And then this past year, or my past round of interviewing, I made it to the final round and I still didn't get it. However, I was offered a volunteer position to read submissions for them, which is essentially what the internship was going to be without the official internship title. And so I think that that's another thing to keep in mind, is even if you don't get the exact position or title you were looking for, other doors can open that will give you the same benefits. So that has been my internship experience.
I think it's great that you touched upon that, because I feel like some students in the literary arts and social justice department might feel a little lost, like there's no options out there for them. And for you to shed light on what exactly is out there for them, what kind of experiences to expect and what companies to apply for, and to not stop trying, right? It's important to keep trying, even if you don't get the title that you want, you're still working at a place that you kept applying for and that you were passionate about. So I think it's great for our attendees to kind of realize that, never stop trying and just keep applying if you can. So before we kind of transition into our next topic of questions, our next round of questions, we do have a Q&A question from Dana, and anyone on this panel, including Jamie or Dawnese, you're more than welcome to answer. So Dana says, I've read a lot of articles stating how corporations prefer a simple resume format. As creatives, how do you go about highlighting that creativity within your personal brand on your resume while maintaining a professional template? Anyone can start, so feel free.
While I don't work at a corporation, some of the best advice I've ever gotten from the literary arts department was from Barbara Barrow, who actually has told me multiple times that a cover letter is the best chance to showcase your storytelling skills. And while I know that's not a direct resume, most of the time, at least when I was applying, jobs are now requiring both anyways. And so I think a chance to really showcase your uniqueness is there in that cover letter, and use the skills that you're getting in your workshops and in your analysis papers or your creative writing papers, to, hone in on that storytelling skill that you're developing right now.
I'd just like to emphasize what Kate shared. When I've been involved in a couple different hiring processes throughout my career, and she's absolutely right. The cover letter is where you can shine with your creativity. When companies are looking at the resume, generally they're just looking for the experience. So it's less the presentation and more just about the actual content that matters the most.
I also wanted to say really quick, for my resume, I like second to everyone, to what you guys have said, the cover letter is very important. But something that I have added to my resume that I think has helped is like projects that I've been a part of that weren't necessarily super professional, I guess. Like I write for the Globe at Point Park. A couple semesters ago, there was a class that put out a literary magazine called Point of Change. I was part of that. And so while those are very academic set things, putting them on my resume was able to show that I do creative things on the side. And then in the interview process, like because I write for the Globe, those things get published on Point Park's website. And so the people that were interviewing me said, oh, okay, I went and read what you had written. And so that gives them a chance to see your creativity outside of what's on your resume. So if you have anything project-wise, that could be good to include as well.
I'm going to add to that as well. Kenny, thank you for offering to let me chime in. But a couple folks have already, talked about the content is what matters. What you're putting in the resume matters. I know as a creative person, it may be very tempting to start to get real fancy with the formatting, right? And I just say that to caution students with not getting too fancy. You want to make sure the person reading it can read it. And that it's in a clear, organized manner. There's going to be different ways that you may be able to showcase your creativity in other ways, perhaps in an e-portfolio or a link to some of your works, depending on what it is that you want to highlight. So just be careful not to get too fancy. Stick to the content, what it is you want them to know about you.
So it looks like we do have another question from Sarah from the LASJ department. She wanted to follow up on Dana's question, and she wants to know, is there a preferred resume format regarding chronological versus skills-based resumes?
So I can piggyback a little bit off of everything that everyone has posed. Yes, the content is vital. And think about it from a quick hits perspective. Nobody wants paragraphs and they don't want bulleted lists that are very, very long. So your skills, especially because most of you, and I'm sure many people on our call have that editing ability, you want to be able to pare down and chunk your content. That is what's vital because you need someone to literally look at it and boom, they can see things right there. So typically what I have found, Sarah, to kind of answer your question, is actually a mix. So utilizing tools like Microsoft's design feature for resumes, Googling either straight from Google or going to LinkedIn for LinkedIn Learning courses and looking at resume trends, looking at what professionals are utilizing at this point for everyone's careers can actually be really helpful because you can see multiple styles and formats and you can kind of build your own brand based on one of those. But the chronological versus the skill based, I've actually noticed that a lot of formats these days are a little bit of both because they start with the chronological at the top, but instead of having skills down here, they're actually side by side. My resume is a 2-column resume where my skills live over here. My content for my jobs lives here. And that's what people see when they look at my information. They are hit with skills right off the bat, not just my current job where they have to sift through and determine what my skills are from that chronological job order. So sometimes a little bit of both is necessary, but the more tools you can use, there's no reason to start from scratch. Like, I'll be honest, my current resume came partially from Microsoft's resume designer because it was easy and it was there and it worked. So if something works for you and it's not overbearing as far as, too much formatting or whatnot, you can totally run with those as well. People and corporations will look at those.
Would anyone else like to touch upon the resume question, chronological versus skills-based resumes?
Yeah, I think to add to that, at least with my experience in the nonprofit world, nonprofits want to know that you're adaptable, and that you have the ability to take on a lot of different things because sometimes you're going to be doing things you never thought you were going to be doing at a nonprofit. And so I think for me, and I think a lot of it is personal choice, but truthfully, I think a chronologic based resume has really shown my change in jobs, and kind of my personal growth, but also like there was a time in between nonprofits that I worked as a barista, and like that really had nothing to do with my nonprofit work or abilities, but it just showed that I was able to hone different skills from completely different spheres of the workplace hemisphere. So yeah, I think, you can find ways to do it either way, but for me personally, a chronological based resume has always worked really well.
And I will say, to kind of touch upon the resume question, if you have a lot of experience from different areas that you really want to focus on. So for me, I was a psychology major, but I also had customer service experience from Dunkin' Donuts, from being a shift leader, from being a team member for about 8 years. So what I did was I separated that into sections. So one section might have been counseling experience or career development experience. And then the other one was either leadership experience or customer service experience. You want to kind of use those words to your advantage. And although my career development experience, or I should say my customer service experience was not in the right chronological order, I should say, I was able to kind of order those experiences based off a section and relevancy to the jobs that I'm applying for. So for you guys, the literary arts of social justice, if you're applying to specifically creative writing jobs, you can create sections in your resume and play around with it to your advantage. Put the most relevant sections that you feel would stand out in the job at the top, and just like any other major too. So that could be something that you guys use. Does anyone else have any suggestions or anything to follow up on that? Or have you realized that you've used that kind of, I won't say template, but skill, I guess, in your resume, and it's been very beneficial for you? Maybe. If not, we can go to the next topic if you would like, but it does look like we have another question. So Kirsten, she asked, actually, how would you recommend incorporating academic experiences in the resume or cover letter? If any of you would like to answer.
I'll take this one. Whenever I listed out like my education, I just included like a short, very brief graph sort of highlighting my key experiences. Like I was the feature editor for the Globe, and like my work study and apprenticeship experiences. I just kind of condensed those into a short paragraph and included that under education on my resume.
I think it depends again on the job you're applying for. Some of the publishing positions I've been applying to for like part-time remote, like more recently. Obviously, my English background is beneficial in a publishing job. So a lot of times, you know, under the, like you said, Nicole, the education part, putting like, you know, in whatever your format is, saying educational experiences and then listing some of the coursework. So like if I was going to apply to a publishing position that focuses on horror literature, I would maybe, you know, center Jess McCourt's Haunted America class I took, or, you know, if you're looking at a poetry-based publishing company, you know, any of the workshops I participated in, Sylvia Plath's class, and, you know, things like that. So I think it depends on what you're looking at. At the school I'm at, I didn't include any classes or anything like that from what I took, just because it wasn't really as relevant to the job description.
Anybody else? If not, we can go to our next topic. So our next topic will be about career challenges and what you kind of faced and how you overcame them, either while you were at Point Park or in your internships, or, you know, the job that you're currently in or past jobs. So Lauren, I'd like to direct this question to you. What was your biggest challenge that you faced during your time here at Point Park, and how did you overcome that?
I think that my biggest challenge was realizing that I wanted to make a significant career change with changing my major. And then even after that, something that I struggle with even now is feeling like I have to be contained to one career or one genre of literature or anything like that. And I think that the way that I overcame this was, I think especially in this day and age, like it's good to take pride in your job, but I think that some people think that their whole identity has to be their career, and it doesn't need to be necessarily. And so that's sort of what I remind myself, is that okay, even if my biggest passions are reading and writing poetry, but I'm not doing that in my career, I can still participate in that. I can still volunteer to read submissions. I can still, read in my free time, write in my free time. So I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that I'm right now working on overcoming, is not limiting my whole identity to what career I'm in or want to go into.
And then Nicole, similar question for you. What are some of the challenges that you've had to kind of overcome as you navigated your career path?
Sure. Mine kind of goes back to during my undergrad, though. Building confidence and learning not to compare my path or my skills to other people was a really big challenge for me. I had classmates who had much higher profile internships than I did, and I thought that meant I was destined to fail. I also compared my writing and my design work to my classmates a lot, and I often felt like I wasn't as creative as they were. I had a pretty intense depressive episode right before graduation, and I felt zero motivation to apply to jobs. I didn't apply to any. My roommate had already accumulated 3 really impressive job offers, and I was like the horse in the never-ending story, just sinking deeper and deeper into the pool of sadness. But I went to my advisor, Heather Fiedler, who was super helpful, and I shared all of my anxieties with her and what I was going through. And she was an awesome listening ear, and she gave me advice that I still rely on this day to get me through. And it's that some people are naturally good at things. Some people just have to work a little harder at it. And that was the realization I needed to accept that in some areas I might just have to work a little bit harder than other creatives, and that is completely okay. And I can say, with certainty that that advice has helped me keep pushing myself to be better and to not get stuck in the pattern of comparing myself to everybody else.
And Kaitlyn, kind of similar question for you as well. Could you just share some of the challenges that you face in your work and maybe some of the techniques that you use to overcome that?
Yeah. So I really resonated with both of those a lot. I do struggle being a creative in what sometimes feels like not a creative path. I definitely felt like there was a lot of judgment going into education after not studying education and leaving it. I really do miss being challenged in reading and writing, but I found a lot of personal ways to be involved in that. As far as career challenges go, the biggest one I'm seeing, probably the 2 biggest ones I'm seeing, is pandemic-based trauma. A lot of my students experienced trauma before the pandemic, and unfortunately it got worse, as many of us all experienced collective trauma during the pandemic, but especially with extreme circumstances like some of my students are facing. It's led to a lot of behavior issues. It Again, it takes a lot of empathy. I think too, on their part, knowing that none of us are going to have good days. We're never going to know what we're experiencing as we deal with ongoing pandemic life still. We're all wearing masks. We can't see each other's faces. Every so often someone has a COVID scare or someone loses a loved one again in our district from COVID. And so just really learning to have that patience. The other one really is the engagement of my students. We only have about 15 students total in person at our building right now. The rest are online, but I wouldn't actually call it completely online immersive learning. A lot of times they're dealing with their life circumstances and school is kind of taking a back burner. And so trying to get them engaged with us is really difficult. But I think one way that I've really learned to deal with that is just the key of relationship building. And it's something you're going to have to do in any job. At this point, my students trust me. They know that if they need something, if they need a resource, even though that's not my direct job, I am going to get them that resource. I think that, no matter what work you do, especially studying in the literary arts department, as most of these students I'm assuming are, you're probably going to go into some type of relationship building job. And even if you don't, you're always going to have coworkers. So I think just learning, I always like to say I'm an extroverted introvert. People are very shocked when they find out I am very exhausted after being extroverted, because I just have that type of personality. But, learning to be comfortable with being a people person, in some ways, and learning how to take that time to also like be alone and be introverted in some ways too. Learning balance is super important.
You bring up a great point. Balance is key to everything in life, I feel, especially as college students. It can be very taxing on students, especially during this time. COVID has been very, I think, traumatic for a lot of people. And I think it's important to recognize that we're all in this together and trying to balance life's challenges with the good as well. We can't ignore the good. So keep recognizing the good and embrace those failures, as JV mentioned earlier in her presentation. But a follow-up for you, Kaitlyn, another question for you. One of the career readiness competencies that we kind of focus on in our office, that we're encouraging students to include in their toolbox, is multicultural competency, which I think is important. What are some tips or advice you have for students to develop and strengthen this competency?
I would say be a listener. Be a listener to whatever community you're working in. Had to experience this a lot, as a white, cis, able-bodied person. Sometimes you have to take a backseat, and that's okay. And sometimes you just need to listen to what your community needs, the community you're working with, you're working in. I also think being humble, admitting you're not perfect. I am still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still trying to, right now, I work with students with disabilities, and that is not something I've ever done before. And so that's been really challenging, because I don't know a lot. I didn't go to school for this. I've kind of gotten thrown in head first. And I've really just had to be honest with my students and say, you need to tell me what you need, and I will make it happen. But I need you firsthand to tell me how we can make this better for you, how we can provide you support. And, just continuing to learn. I think, as someone who studied English, one way I do that is I'm constantly reading, anything I can get my hands on about, the different communities I work with and serve, is really important. And obviously knowing that those don't speak to an entire identity or culture, and that everyone has unique circumstances and individualized experiences. But just being willing to listen, learn, and be an ongoing, ally in everything you do.
I completely agree. One of the things that you mentioned was listening. And as a collective, the majority of us, I believe, listen to respond rather than listening to understand and comprehend. Some people listen to get the next word in rather than listening to understand, take a breath, take a moment, really empathize with that person and understand what they're going through, and then coming up with some response or no response. No response is usually sometimes the best. But I'm glad that you brought up that point. Dana, I want to kind of interrupt us a little bit, but she wanted to add to that question. She said, what do you wish you did differently during your initial job hunt? And I assume that's for Kaitlyn directly.
Yeah, I think, a big thing I wish I had known, sometimes it is great to just apply to everything, but sometimes it's also really important to know what you want. I don't feel like I completely knew what I wanted when I was leaving college, and I felt kind of desperate for a job. To be honest, I grew up in a rural little small town in northeastern PA. And I loved living in a city, near a city. And I really did not want to go back home. I was adamant. And so I was applying to anything that would stop me from going back to live with my parents. And I think that was a double-edged sword a little bit. I didn't see myself teaching. I still don't think I see myself teaching forever. But I think knowing what you're looking for and also asking really good questions to your interviewers. I have a coworker who told me that he asked during his interview why the position was being filled, why did the last teacher leave? And in education, that is a really gutsy question, but an important one to ask. So I think, know what you want, and then maybe apply to everything you can within that reasoning. If you want to stay in Pittsburgh, then apply anywhere in Pittsburgh, or if you want to work in publishing in Pittsburgh, then maybe your options are going to be limited, but start by applying everywhere there, and then know what you're willing to kind of settle on. Are you willing to move? Are you willing to work a different job until that dream happens? And I think just knowing that this is your first step in your journey, you're going to keep going. You're probably going to end up at another job. Most people don't stay forever. So yeah, I would say know what you want, know what you're willing to compromise, and know that this is your first stepping stone.
Thank you for answering that, Kaitlyn. Lauren, what are some common misperceptions people have about graduating with an English or creative writing degree? And how can we combat these misconceptions to inspire creative careers?
Yeah, I get asked, I think it was Jamie who said it. We always get asked why, like, what are you going to do with this degree? What are you going to do with a creative writing degree? Which I got asked the same thing when I had a dance degree. What are you going to do with a ballet degree? I think that a lot of times all that people are worried about is what are you going to do with this degree? Because on the face level, creative writing doesn't just mean that's what you're limited to. And I think that that is part of the awareness that needs to be spread, is that it's more about, and we've touched on this through this whole panel, it's more about the skills that you gain from that degree rather than the specifics of the degree itself. And in any job, writing is necessary. It doesn't matter what you do. You're going to have coworkers, you're going to have people that you're writing to, writing for. And I think that that's pretty well known. I think that people are starting to understand that writing is important no matter what you do. But I think that creativity is equally as important, if not sometimes more so important. Because when you're going into like a new job, it's important to have fresh ideas, and that's what can set you apart, I think, in the application process and the interview process. For me personally, that was one of the things, like I said, that set me apart in getting this great internship opportunity that I have now, is I was coming at it from a very creative approach. And so when we have meetings and we're trying to brainstorm, okay, what can we do, especially because everyone on this team has been working at the company for 5+ years, so they know the way that things have normally been done, and I don't know that. And so I'm coming at it with a fresh idea. And so I think that English and creative writing degrees specifically foster that sort of creativity that helps in that transition from college to career, that I think is sort of underplayed. Like, I think more awareness about how important that authenticity, like Jamie said, and the creativity is in getting a job that you enjoy.
Thank you for shedding light on that. And then Nicole, we talked a lot about writing skills and what's kind of needed for, creative writing, English, and social justice majors. But what kind of non-writing skills would you recommend students to develop?
I recommend reading the Strengths Finders book and taking the test to figure out what your strengths are. It's been around for a while. It's relatively short, but the book sort of narrows down and groups together a variety of workplace strengths. And then there's a quiz to help you figure out which ones you fit into. When I started at the Central Penn Business Journal, that's like one of their requirements in the onboarding process, is that everybody takes the Strengths Finders quiz, and then they would put everybody's strengths with their cubicle nameplate, so that if somebody is working on a project and needs help, they could easily identify somebody who might be able to pitch in and help them meet their goal. It was a really enlightening exercise. And I still have my little form with my strengths on it. And I come back to it every now and then to like remind myself like what I'm good at and also where my weaknesses are and what maybe I could work on a little bit more. So yeah, Strengths Finders, it's really, really eye-opening. Highly recommend.
That's a great recommendation for anyone, not even just the attendees here. I think anyone could benefit from using that. But let's move on to our last set of questions before we wrap up and before closing remarks. And before we open the floor for any additional questions from the audience. So Nicole, what would you tell someone considering a career, or what tips do you have for someone considering a career in journalism or creative writing?
For journalism specifically, I'm sure you've already had people tell you that it's a dead-end job and it's dying, and that's not necessarily true. The newsroom's the best place in the world. Anytime there's a major news event happening, I always feel a little sad that I'm not in a newsroom working with the team to put out a story. It's just an awesome place. So, and I'm sure that's also a quality that creative writers can relate to. If somebody is telling you, what are you going to do with that degree? And just ignore them, because every business and organization in the universe needs a good writer in one way or another, because they need somebody that can communicate their mission, their goals, whatever it is they're trying to accomplish. More broadly, I recommend just getting as many different types of writing experiences as you can. I wish I had learned what a tax millage was before I graduated, and then had to go and cover school board meetings and didn't really know what was going on. So I recommend just diving into as many different types of writing, whether it's, technical or grant writing or, feature writing, anything. Just try to experiment as much as you can. That's how you'll learn. I still don't know what a tax millage is.
I don't even think I know what that is. So we're one and the same right now. Kaitlyn, what has helped you get to where you are, and what advice would you have for others who have similar career aspirations?
I would say a big one is learning from the people above you. To be honest, I've been really lucky that every boss I've ever had has been really interested in being more of a mentor than a boss. Both qualities are important to have, but I think when you are close with someone in a way that's a mentorship style, you feel comfortable asking questions. And I think that's really important. I think that you need to be able to ask, how do I do this? What do I do? I'm new at this and I'm really having some problems. Can you talk me through it? So I think that's been a big one, especially diving kind of headfirst into a completely different career path than I had planned. I would also say be willing to think on your toes in any job. You are always going to have to respond to an email in a timely fashion, and sometimes you don't have the answer. And so you have to be able to, kind of think on your feet. And I think the last one is kind of not being afraid to own up to mistakes or, inexperience in some places. I know a big one for me has been doing math this year with high school students. I can do the algebra stuff, but when I was in high school, I had a tutor for trig, so I didn't fail. And now I'm teaching trig and providing support to students on trig, and that has been horribly difficult for me. So I've formed a really great relationship with our math teacher and know that I can kind of go to her at any point and say, a student and I are working through this. Can you talk me through the steps? And then kind of picking up on it pretty fast and being able to relay that information in the next question, or, work through it a little bit better together as a group than just me as an individual. So I think all of those things are really important skills to have in your job search and your future career. Just be yourself, ask questions, form relationships with, your coworkers. It's really important and it helps a lot.
So essentially what you're saying is disturb the universe, right? Because it sounds like you just covered all 3 tips that Jamie mentioned earlier. So let's transition it into our final question. Lauren, what tips do you have for attendees who might be unsure of what to do after graduation or are about to graduate?
I know this has been touched on quite a bit in this panel, but don't be afraid to apply for any job that looks even remotely interesting to you or even slightly relates to the skills that you have. I think that that is a big thing that I did in getting my internship, um, which hasn't been like, it's not a secure job offer that I'm going to get after graduation, but it's definitely lifted some anxieties off of me. But I think that just looking for anything that involves, like for me, writing and editing is a big thing that I know that I'm good at and know that I enjoy to do. So I was looking for any job that included that. And like I touched on before, you don't have to be completely in love with your job and you don't have to feel like everything that you are is what you do as your career. I think that not everyone gets lucky enough to have a career that they absolutely love, and I think that that's okay. And I think that sometimes it can be better because you're not going to get burnt out because the things that you're enjoying to do in your free time, you don't have to do when you're at your job. And so I think that it's a good balance. And I think that broadening your horizons in your job search is really important. Like, I'm working at a cybersecurity company. I never thought that that's a field I would get into. It's not something that I'm particularly excited about. It's not something that I'm, you know, it's not part of my personality that I love cybersecurity, but I enjoy my job and I like the people that I work with, and that's enough. And it's okay for that to be enough. And I think that especially for our generation, people are so worried about being in love with what they do every day, and you don't have to. So I think that that's my biggest tip for people who are about to graduate.
I think that's great advice. And I think everyone could take something away from this event and the panel portion and our panelists and all their answers. I would now like to open the floor for anyone. If they have a question for our panelists or for our keynote speaker, Jamie, feel free to use the Q&A function, or you can simply raise your hand and we can give you permission to speak. Anybody? Or if any of the panelists have something they want to add or share that might be valuable to the attendees here right now.
I do want to add something. Oh, sorry, Nicole. The ongoing problems of Zoom meetings. I just wanted to add a big thing that was really important to me in undergrad, especially if you're not quite at the senior level yet and are still actively applying to internships. Ask the literary arts professors for letters of recommendations. First of all, they're writers. They write marvelous letters of recommendations. And B, a lot of my bosses have brought up in interviews, like, your professor mentioned like this quality you have, or like this skill that you've been learning with them and have done a really good job at honing in on. So like, even if a job doesn't necessarily ask for one, I think it's kind of good to send one over, unless they explicitly say don't send one. I just think they're useful to have, and they really speak to the kind of person you are without you doing it explicitly.
Kate, I love that suggestion. That actually reminds me, I used to do the same thing, especially when I was a recent grad. When I would go on interviews, I would take my resume and I would take copies of letters of recommendations that I may have, and I made sure that I passed that along to the interviewing panel before I left, and just said a little, little something, add a little sugar on top, right? Because if you have folks who are willing to say good things about you, sometimes they may notice things about you that you don't even notice yourself, and the potential that you may not see in yourself. So that's a really good tip.
Nicole, I know you had something to say.
I was just gonna sing praises for your department real quick, if that won't infringe too much on whatever Dawnese has planned for the rest of the chat.
Go for it.
I wholeheartedly encourage students to connect with the Center for Career Readiness now, and get help with building your resume. What's really special about the center is that they are willing to help you long after you graduate. So whenever I was working on moving back to Pittsburgh and I knew I wanted to try something other than journalism, I called Elsie at least 5 times probably to prep for interviews and to get her feedback on how to make my resume that was mainly just reporter jobs look more like it could be a marketer resume. And she was immensely helpful. We emailed back and forth with different revisions on my cover letters and my resumes. I cannot stress the value of the center enough. Also, it's free. So yeah, you'd be crazy not to use the resource. So just keep them in mind, not only as you're preparing to graduate, but further down the road when you're looking for something new.
And if I can just kind of piggyback off of Nicole for a second, you never know what a professor will remember about you years down the line, because I can speak from my experience just in the last week of prepping for this session. I never thought in a million years that I would get this invite. And I worked with Sarah extensively when I was at Point Park, and to get the invite for today was absolutely amazing. Like, my husband probably was ready to tell me to zip it the night that she messaged me because I was super geeked. So you never quite know what your skills or you as a person have impressed upon another person, and when that connection could offer you something super awesome. So yes, definitely utilize those folks who know you, and just know that even down the line, you could have some opportunities to work with them again.
I do want to say thank you, Nicole, for those kind words about our office, and thank you, Jamie, for being here. Thank you to all of our panelists for just being here and providing your insight, to Point Park students, to me, to the other panelists here. I just really greatly appreciate you guys participating. Before we transition into the closing remarks, does anyone who is attending, do they have a question? And if so, feel free to put it in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand and we can give you permission to speak. If you don't have a question right now, that's fine. But if you think of one along the way, feel free to put it wherever, put it in the Q&A, and we can answer it after our closing remarks. So right now, let me go ahead and share my screen. Maybe I forgot to click share screen. All right. So now I would like to introduce Dawnese Booker. She's our program manager of experiential learning in the Professional Career Readiness Center here at Point Park. You heard some of her remarks to the questions earlier by our audience, and you'll hear more from her in a little bit. So as program manager of experiential learning, Dawnese is responsible for the administration, coordination, and evaluation of programs, services, and policies related to experiential learning. Dawnese uses her background in higher education and human resources to build relationships with employers and students that help connect students to experiential learning opportunities such as internships and co-ops. She has a passion for working with students and helping them combine their skills, interests, and coursework with real-world experience to prepare for life after graduation. She will provide closing remarks and share insight on how you can leverage Career Center resources and experiential learning for long-term career success. Welcome, Dawnese, and thank you so much for being here this evening.
All right, hopefully you can hear me and you can see the screen okay, and thank you for that introduction. Are we good? I can see you. Okay, awesome. The program this evening, I do just want to take a minute and say, from our keynote speaker to our panelists, I know myself, and in reflecting on my professional career, there was a lot that resonated with me, and I can really just kind of hit home the point that, many of the folks made tonight about, not being afraid to try things that are maybe outside of your wheelhouse, or you think are outside of your wheelhouse. You just never know where you may end up. I can tell you from my personal experience, my internship back in my day was in the Office of Campus Life at the university that I attended. And at the time, I was a mass media communication major. I had planned on doing like PR or marketing or advertising. And when I was approached about this internship opportunity, I thought to myself, I don't know. The ringer was that it was paid. So that was a little hard to turn down. And as I thought more about it, I was going to be overseeing our new student orientation program. And I thought about the different planning and marketing and advertising, the events, working with our orientation leaders. And I didn't necessarily think of them as things that I liked to do or that they were transferable skills, but they really were, because they interested me. And so I ended up doing that internship. And if not for that internship, I don't think I would have ever considered working in higher ed. In fact, it's not something that was ever on my radar that I may do someday. So again, I just want to hit home at that point and not being afraid to try new things. For my presentation this evening, I'm going to try to keep it somewhat brief. I do have some slides prepared to help keep me on track. Like some of the panelists, I like to talk. So I'm going to try to keep us on track so that we can maybe wrap up a little bit early. And then if there's any time for questions at the end, we can do that. So I'm going to be talking about some services as they relate to the Professional Career Readiness Center and really tie into a lot of the discussion from this evening and how you can really make the most of your time here at Point Park before you venture out into the real world, I should say. So the Professional Career Readiness Center helps students prepare for their professional career. Many folks this evening also share different ways that they have interacted with our office, and I appreciate your kind words. I know that I get excited talking about our services because I know the impact that they have. We offer special programs and services, events like the one this evening to help you take advantage of opportunities for professional development and also work experience that's related to your major, or at least what you think you want to do, right? So you may be wondering, what exactly does that look like? We heard about a few different things from some of our panelist examples earlier, but I'm going to go over several services that we offer in our department. One of those is help with professional documents and brand management. So I believe it was Nicole who had mentioned getting help with your resume, right? I know there were a few questions in the chat this evening asking questions about how should I do this or that with my resume? When should I do this or that with my resume? We have career counselors available that are available to help students with their resumes. And also after graduation, as Nicole mentioned, you still are able to access our office, our services for free. Job internship and co-op search assistance. So that can look like a few different things. During your time at Point Park, a lot of that like internship and co-op search is most likely what you may be focusing on. And that is like with me, your career counselor, and even sometimes with faculty too, who may be aware of opportunities. I do have students that are also sometimes looking for part-time positions while they're in school, so we can assist with that. And I'll talk a little bit later how you can actually search for those positions. But even post-graduation, again, looking for maybe those entry-level jobs, or if you're looking to make a career change and you just don't really know how to do that, we can help. We also offer professional networking and career events. So for example, the one that you're at right now, we host throughout the semester candid career conversations that focus on targeted topics as they relate to your career readiness, whether it's tips and tricks for searching for an internship or job, information about how you might network. We do lots of different targeted events with those candid career conversations. And since the pandemic started, which is when we started hosting them, they have all been virtual and they're recorded. and post it on our YouTube page. So you can always check those out if you missed any. In addition to the online webinars, there's career fairs, whether they're hosted by us or another organization that may be of interest to Point Park students or alum. And then even employers may contact us to host events, maybe come on campus for a tabling or information session. Additionally, our office offers help with interview preparation. So getting ready for that interview definitely can be nerve-wracking, right? You're like, what are they going to ask me? What do I say if they ask this or that? Don't freak out. You can work with our office. Again, our career counselors are really good at working with students to help prepare you for that. Additionally, we offer career exploration, and depending on where you're at in your academic or even career journey, if you're postgrad, if you're an alum, or maybe even a student who already has some professional experience and is working on your degree, you may still be wondering, what do I want to do with my degree? What do I want to eventually get into? And having those kinds of conversations about your strengths, your dislikes, the things that you aren't so good at are going to help you kind of determine what that might look like for you. And then once you get a feel for what it is you think you want to do, right? And that can change over the years, right? As we've seen this during this event, going through some career planning and coaching and having conversations about what it's going to take to get you there, and having a plan to get there. So you may be wondering at this point, okay, so we offer these different services. How do we develop these services? Where does all of this come from? Well, we actually refer to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, that's NACE, to develop our programs and services to help you get career ready. The NACE actually develops a set of competencies that we use when developing those programs. So these competencies are actually ones that they have identified by working with employers and colleges as the ones that employers are looking for in employees when they come to work for them. So here are some of the examples. Well, these are actually the competencies. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail, but career and self-development, communication. We've heard a lot about that, right? Critical thinking, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, teamwork, and technology. I'm sure none of these probably sound like a surprise, but it probably helps you start to kind of figure out, okay, well, why do we do what we do in our office? This is why, and this is where we get that information from. Now, thinking about those services that we offer and thinking about what it takes to get you career ready, experiential learning is a big part of that. And it's not just like a one size fits all and that there's only one way to do it. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. But as our panelists and our keynote speaker mentioned, don't wait until you graduate to immerse yourself in real world opportunities. Start doing those activities now. So there's a few examples of what those may look like during your time at Point Park. And to your surprise, no, those are not just internships and co-ops. Those are the programs I manage, but there are other ways that you may get involved in experiential learning to get that hands-on experience. So one of those can be informational interviewing and job shadowing. Meeting with an employer or a professional in the field to actually start to learn what it's really like, kind of like what we did this evening in the panel discussion, but that one-on-one interaction can be very helpful. Volunteering. So those volunteer experiences, I believe it was Lauren who had mentioned, can also give you the opportunity to connect with employers or professionals in the field, or even learn about an industry that you may be interested in without all the extra pressure, right? And the officialness of maybe an internship. Student organization involvement. This is also a big one and one I can speak personally to. Getting involved in organizations, whether you are an actual leader in that organization or a member, can allow you to network with other individuals who have similar interests and also perhaps make you aware of opportunities that may be out there. capstone projects. So towards the end of your time, your academic journey, doing projects as they relate to your career goals, doing research that can help you as well. Student teaching, definitely getting that idea of what it might be like if your major or your career path is going in that direction. Practicum assignments, internships, and co-op opportunities. So as you can see, there's a lot of different ways that might happen. I think, again, that our panelists and our keynote really highlighted what that can look like for you in different kind of examples. I'm going to talk a little bit more about internships and co-ops because those are my programs that I manage. And so, they gave me the floor, so why not? But internships and co-ops, they both do give you the chance to get hands-on experience. So don't freak out if you're like, oh, well, I can only find an internship. I don't want students to ever think of it like that. Opportunity to get hands-on experience is always valuable. I will say that typically for internship students, these are students that want to try out a career path before graduation. They may not necessarily know what it is that they want to do, but they know they want to get some experience. These may be part-time or full-time positions. Typically, they are more part-time. They may be paid or unpaid, and they may do them for credit or not for credit. Again, with our programs here at Point Park, I typically work with the students who are looking to do these kinds of experiences for credit. However, again, if you're looking for an opportunity, we still can assist you with your search. Now, on the other hand, co-ops are more involved. It allows you the opportunity to get paid, earn credits, and gain experience in a full-time work environment. So whereas internships were a little bit more on the part-time side and more just to get your feet wet, co-ops are more for our students who really have an idea of what industry, maybe what employer, or maybe even what department they may want to work in before graduation, and they really want to jumpstart their career. The reason why I say that is with our co-op program, there are some additional eligibility requirements. I'm not going to get into all of the detail there, but you do have to be later on in your academic journey, a junior or a senior, and at least a 3.0 GPA. Now, again, with each of these programs, you do want to make sure that you're meeting the academic eligibility. It can vary slightly in different ways depending on your academic department. The best way to determine that, go ahead and reach out to me. If you don't have my contact information, it is on the website, or you can always schedule an appointment on Handshake. So that's Dawnese Booker, that's me, if you have questions about internships or co-op. Our students work all over the place, especially with these internship and co-op opportunities. These actually are examples of where our students have gone. This is just a very small snapshot of all the places that our students have done an internship or co-op. I will say, if this is something you're interested in, keep in mind that you do not have to do it with an employer in the Pittsburgh area. We have had students travel to other states. We have even had students do an internship or co-op in another country. And now, on the bright side of the pandemic, as much as I hate it, it does open up a lot of doors in the remote field, and there's a lot of remote opportunities that kind of allow you to expand your options to connect with employers, again, outside of the Pittsburgh area. With that being said, you'll see a lot of Pittsburgh names here because, well, Pittsburgh has a lot of employers. PNC Bank, UPMC, WPXI, Kennywood, the Steelers, the Penguins, lots of good employers on here. We have Highmark on here as well, where you may look at to look for one of those opportunities. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I don't really see any employers on here that spark my interest, that's okay. We do have Handshake available to help you search for those kinds of opportunities. So whether they are full-time or part-time positions, maybe it's kind of like a side job that you need during the summer, or an internship or co-op. or even after graduation, post-graduation employment. Handshake is a really great job and internship tool that allows you to do a number of things. So one, you can search for job and internships, right? Two, you actually can connect with employers on there, similar to how you might on LinkedIn. Additionally, you can look on Handshake for professional career development event opportunities. So again, those career fairs or informational sessions that may be hosted by Point Park, or an employer who is hosting an event where they're inviting Point Park students. And you can make appointments with the folks in our office straight from Handshake. So if you don't have contact information for someone and you're not sure who to reach out to, you can hop onto Handshake and make an appointment based off the kind of help that you need. So if you are not on Handshake, or if you've never been on Handshake, take a little bit of time to hop on there, maybe later this evening or over the weekend, to check it out. It really is a great resource. Another good resource that we have, and I also get excited talking about it, is Careers on Point. So this is an on-demand, self-paced, online career readiness program that our office developed to allow students to get that help with all of those career development activities, and even like different competencies when you can, on your own time, at your own pace. You have access to this as a student from day one. You actually can get into it right on Schoology. As you should see it under courses. If you don't see it under courses, let our office know. We'll make sure that you do have access to it. But it has a number of resources and activities that you can complete, again, at your leisure. And as you complete those activities, you actually get points. And once you earn a certain amount of points, you earn a career ready certificate and a graduation gift. This is just a couple snapshots of what that looks like. The activities and resources are actually broken down by freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. The reason why I love this is it helps you really structure your career readiness and your career development, and shows you those things that you can be doing and you should be doing year to year to help you with your progress. Now, if you're thinking, okay, well, I'm a junior and I haven't really done this or that, or I'm a freshman and I feel like I'm a little ahead, that's okay too, because you can access all of the folders at any time. So you can bounce around and check out the modules that relate to you. So this is the freshman folder, just a quick snapshot of the kind of activities that you may see there and the information. So I know we had questions about resumes and cover letters and references. That's on here. Dressing for success, getting your elevator pitch ready to go. Lots and lots of good information on here. And you're not alone in using this. So when you are working through these activities, we encourage you to also continue to connect with the folks in our office so we can make sure that you're on the right track. And this is just another screenshot here that shows you kind of how the module works. Now, as you are navigating your career journey, and this came up earlier, COVID is very much still here, right? And I think all of us have felt the impact of COVID in different ways, and the uncertainties of what that might mean for your career, either now or in the future. And we're aware of that, right? We want to make sure that you stay on track and that COVID doesn't disrupt things for you. So here are just a few things that you can make sure that you're doing in the meantime, just to make sure that you're not so far off track. Updating your resume, updating your LinkedIn profile. It's a really good way to network and connect with professionals in addition to using Handshake. Scheduling a meeting with your career counselor. So our career counselors actually work with students in certain major areas. I'm going to give you your career counselor for our literary arts and social justice students here in just a minute. But meeting with that individual and making sure that you're on track and where you want to be. Also checking Handshake for available positions and upcoming events, and applying for internships and co-ops. So we talked a lot throughout this event about taking advantage of those experiential learning opportunities as often and as early as you can. So this page actually just has our contact information for anyone who may want to jot that down or take a screenshot of it. If you have general inquiries and you're not sure who to contact, you can go ahead and reach out to our career dev at pointpark.edu email address. We do also have social media. For those of you who are on social media, we have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of these different platforms where we will share events, job opportunities, and even just general tips and tricks as they relate to career development. And then finally, this is Monica Ritter. So she is our career counselor who works primarily with our literary arts and social justice students. This is her email address, but again, as I mentioned, you can always go ahead and schedule a meeting with her on Handshake. That is the end of my my closing remarks. So if there's any questions, I would love to take them. But if not, Kenny, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you to wrap up for the evening.
Thank you, Dawnese. And as Dawnese mentioned, we have a lot of great resources, not only for current students, but also Point Park alumni. So after you graduate, you heard from Nicole that she used our resources to help, generate a resume, help apply for jobs, and just that general career center help. We're more than welcome to help after you graduate. It's free after you graduate. We love free things, right? So keep that in mind. But before we go and close out for the evening, I just wanted to bring to your guys' attention some of the events that our office is putting on. So this is just a quick little graphic for you guys to, take in. You can screenshot, take a picture of it if you want. But these are some of the career readiness events that we have coming up for the rest of the semester. So today we had the Literary Arts and Social Justice event. And then next week we have our Candid Career Conversations, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Workplace. That'll be next Thursday at 4 p.m. You can, it's virtual, as Dawnese mentioned, and it's going to be on, or you can register on Handshake. And we'll be talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to the workplace. And then I know you guys are probably curious about some career fairs coming up. So Westpac, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's a huge organization. I think it's the largest one in the Western PA region, or PA all in general, I can't remember, where they're having two different career fairs. One's going to be in person and one is going to be virtual. The in-person one will happen on March 9th from 11 to 4 in the Monroeville Convention Center. You can register on Handshake for that. And there is shuttle service available. So if you guys are looking for shuttle service, please, you can reach out to me at kanderson1 at pointpark.edu, and we'll be happy to share that with you. And then virtual, there's a virtual career fair through Westpac the next day, March 10th from 11 to 4, and you can register on Handshake for that. The virtual career fair will happen through Handshake as well. And then I know you guys are, I hope you guys are excited for this, I really hope. Our office will be putting on an in-person career fair for all encompassing majors labeled Spring Internship Co-op and Job Fair on March 31st from 10 to 3 p.m. It'll be in Lawrence Hall. It'll cover the span of 3 floors, floors 1, 2, and 3. Look on Handshake for additional details and to register. And if you have any questions, you can contact me at kanderson1 at pointpark.edu, or you can contact our department email at careerdev@pointpark.edu. Before we leave for today, I just want to thank again everyone who spoke tonight. Jamie, for your amazing keynote presentation. It was relative. It was relative to the discussion. It was relative to the panel discussion. We kept referring back to it, and I think it could be relative to just everything in life. And also our panelists as well, Nicole, Lauren, Kate, thank you so much for participating. I hope that the attendees here found your answers and your insight and the information that you provided very insightful, and they took it in and they were able to use it upon graduation and for life after. And as always, Dawnese, thank you for touching upon our Career Center resources, for being, my right-hand person and just being there for our office as always. I also want to give a shout out to Tom from Media Services for helping put together this event. Without him, this event would not have happened. So please, if you have time, feel free to thank Tom and Media Services. They do a lot on the back end to make this happen. And also thank you, Sarah, and the Literary Arts and Social Justice Department for this collaboration. I always love working with you. You have great insight, great recommendations. And I hope the people who attended this event found this event very valuable. So with that said, meeting adjourned, if you want to call it that, but this wraps up the Literary Arts and Social Justice event for 2022. I hope you all have a great evening. If you're driving, please stay safe, and we will see you soon.